I'm taking you through some of my favourite King's Gambit games. And today I'm going to be looking at a game of David Bronstein. Now, he was one of the great exponents of the King's Gambit. This is from 1963 and he was playing against a computer. It's a very strange game and full of those strange quirks that Bronstein had in his play, and brilliance as well. And well, I've been looking through these King's Gambit games to mark the release of my new DVD. You can see it there. PowerPlay 27, the King's Gambit, and I demonstrate a repertoire for white with the King's Gambit, and I had a lot of fun recording it. So let's look at this game. So this is pretty odd. Let's get to the King's Gambit position, because this is a game that Bronstein played with white against a computer in the Soviet Union, in EVM M20, whatever that is, in 1963. So this is pretty early days for chess computers. And I mean, I took this from Bronstein's famous book. You can see it there, 200 Open Games by David Bronstein, where he looks at games only with e4, e5. It's a fantastic book. I mean, it's from the early 70s. And he writes in such a quirky way, in such an entertaining way. He has such an original view of chess, maybe of life as well, that it's so entertaining. And he said that he was invited to play against this computer. And in the first game, he said, "Oh, I'll play without my queen. I'll beat it so easily." And the computer ended up exchanging pieces very diligently and beat Bronstein. And Bronstein said, "I demand a second game, but this time I'll have my queen back." And he played the King's Gambit. Well, okay, let's have a look what happened. So pawn takes pawn from the computer. Knight to f3 and knight f6. So pawn to e5. So knight h5 is Shalop's variation, which actually these days has had quite a bit of a revival. But the computer played knight g4, which is not that good. And I sense from the next few moves that Bronstein thought, okay, I've got this one now. And he started to have a bit of fun. I mean, I think, well, the move that Bronstein played, d4, is a good move. But if you want to break up these pawns, I mean, if you play h3 and then d4, now, of course, if you play bishop f4, that's just tremendous for white. So g5, and then just g3 to break up those pawns. And I think this is tremendous for white already. Remember, if we can get through to f7, then black is going to be in trouble. Anyway, Bronstein played d4, also a good move. And the computer decided to play g5, protecting that f-pawn. Knight c3, so simple development. That knight still looks a bit funny on g4. But the computer played knight e3. Well, I mean, perhaps you'd like to have a think about how you'd play this position, but it seems to me that white can play in such a straightforward way and could win, well, has every prospect of winning quite quickly if you simply exchange off that knight on e3. Let's get rid of that one and just play bishop c4. And you're going to castle and hit f7 as quickly as possible. I find it very hard to believe that black would survive that, particularly if you're a computer. But after knight e3, I think this is where Bronstein thought, okay, I'm going to have a bit of fun here. And this shows the kind of imagination that he had. He played the queen to e2. Of course, this knight can still be eliminated and queen takes and all looks wonderful for white. If g4, then I think you can just sack a piece just get rid of the knight and blast through the f file. But the computer played knight takes bishop. Now, I mean, who wouldn't just recapture this with every prospect of blasting through the f file? Perhaps knight e4 to follow, perhaps a piece sack, but this just looks enormous for white. You can also always castle queenside. But Bronstein played knight e4. Now this is the first indication really that he's going to do something a bit funny. So, well, of course, bishop e7 is possible, and then we can just recapture. We can just play rook takes knight, and it looks brilliant for white. But the computer played knight e3, hanging onto that piece. Now, perhaps Bronstein suspected that the computer was very materialistic. I mean, they certainly were in those days. This is a very long time before good old AlphaZero and you know, even much later iterations of computers that regularly grabbed material, because that horizon effect, I'm afraid, comes into play. So the computer kept the extra piece. Knight f6 check and king e7. Well, already this must be fantastic for white, even though white's a piece down. For example, if we just exchange off bishop for knight and play knight takes g5, it looks pretty simple to me. Actually, let me show you a funny checkmate. d5, and now, of course, you could just castle, but queen b5. I really like that move. And, you know, we're ready to take that pawn and just clear the position. But if c6, check, and mate. There you go. It's a funny move, queen b5. You know, you wouldn't think it's going to potentially lead to checkmate in a couple of moves, but it does the job. Anyway, bishop takes knight just looks like the obvious move, but Bronstein played bishop d2, so it's clear he's having some fun. He just thought, and I'm sure that he'd seen what was about to take place. So the computer played knight takes pawn on c2, check. The king came up to f2. And of course, it got greedy and took the rook. That's what they did. Bishop g7 gives it a chance to hang on, and then rook c1. I mean, white has tremendous compensation. But anyway, knight takes rook. Let's see what happened. And Bronstein relates something quite funny in the story, that basically, shortly after this, they actually had to end the game. Knight d5 check. Yeah, if the king goes back, then basically white should repeat and then take on g5 with a huge initiative. Should be winning for white, actually, in spite of the fact that white at the moment is quite a bit down on material, but actually white's initiative looks absolutely huge. There's queen h5 coming. But anyway, after knight d5 check, king e6, queen c4. That's obviously what Bronstein had foreseen. And here, the computer researchers basically said, sorry, it's time to pack up. This was the second game that they'd played, and obviously they'd run out of time. Bronstein said, yeah, but it's mate. And he announced a mate in 10. And, well, the computer programmers were kind of a bit confused and said, oh, okay, well, we're playing by proper rules here, so why don't you seal a move and we'll kind of resume the next day. And Bronstein duly sealed his move, knight takes pawn check. And he had a phone call the next morning with the programmers resigning the game. So let's see exactly how the game should end. So queen takes knight. Knight takes pawn, double discovered check. Knight d5 check, so that's cleared the c file. King e6. Okay, knight takes pawn check, another double discovered check. And now the knight comes back. So basically, clearing those pawns gives this bishop some options. Excuse me, I'm a bit hoarse. So, for example, if king e6, check, and that is mate. And, excuse me, if the king goes this way, then check. And queen takes bishop, and that's mate. So, after knight d5 check, that's the last move, king e8, queen takes bishop check, queen d8, all happens with checks, knight c7, bishop b4, d6, bishop takes pawn, and now one last move for white, queen e8, checkmate. There you go. Bronstein called that his immortal game. I think he was, he would, I'm sure, acknowledge that that was perhaps stretching a little bit. It looked to me like he was having a lot of fun against the computer and basically wanted to create something brilliant and felt that he could do against the machine. There you go. Thanks very much for watching, and do check out that new DVD if you're interested in playing the King's Gambit for white. There's some really fun stuff on there.